Welcome to Fresh Outlook, where we take a look at the news affecting you. I'm Toschi. We thank you for spending part of your day with us. Now, there's a lot to talk about today, including the economy. Is the U.S. economy expanding, and where are we headed? And speaking of dollars, we will talk about Apple taxes and why a Senate panel is now examining how Apple may have sidestepped tens of billions of dollars in taxes. And we are going to talk about the cost of the cleanup in Oklahoma. We begin our Fresh Outlook discussions with Dee Dee Benkie. She is with us again. Media analyst Jackie Guzda, and of course we also have Scott Monje. He is the senior editor for Encyclopedia Americana. We thank you so much for joining us. And first of all, we saw all those devastating photos this week, all the video from Oklahoma. Such a tragedy out there. Now, as the nation and the world mourned, we saw homes destroyed and learned about the innocent lives that were lost, including 7 children. But we also learned about the many heroes, including the teachers who saved so many young lives. Now, there are estimates that the rebuilding could cost more than $1 billion, and that raises the question about cuts in the disaster aid. Our first story takes a look at why Oklahoma senators voted against funding disaster aid for other parts of the country.
New video footage shows the deadly path of the tornado that struck Moore, Oklahoma. The tornado can be seen from multiple angles as the person drives around town. Many residents are slowly returning to their houses or semblances of what they call a home.
You just have to look at it objectively. If there's anything you can use or anything you really want to keep, and the rest of it, it's just stuff. Just stuff, and stuff can always be replaced.
This is the first tornado I've been in, so it was something else. I don't want to do it again.
Will you rebuild here?
No. Move somewhere else.
The cost of a massive tornado could be more than $2 billion, according to a preliminary estimate.
It just takes your breath away when you see it, especially when you walk upon a hospital that's totally demolished, or a school where school children were, and to think about parents dropping their children off at school that morning, anticipating that they would pick them up that night and that school would be over this week. It was their final week of school. And certainly even the teachers and the administrators that were lost. It's very heartbreaking.
Scientists concluded the storm was a rare, powerful type of twister known as an EF5, ranking it at the top of the enhanced Fujita scale used to measure tornado strength.
And those pictures, as we said, are just absolutely devastating. Well, now the question is the cleanup of the cost. We're going to start our first question with why some of the Oklahoma senators voted against funding disaster aid in other parts of the country, most notably with Sandy. And Scott, if you can maybe take us through this and explain it a little bit to us, and then get your opinions from Jackie and, of course, Dee Dee.
Yes, well, it's become tied up both in a question of political philosophy and a question of partisanship. The Republicans, all the senators and all the representatives from Oklahoma are Republicans, and though they're some of a spectrum from centrist Republicans to conservative Republicans, they tend to believe that the government should cut down on its spending, something in which I think they're mistaken in the current economic situation.
And even, let's talk about Chris Christie right now. He even chastised some of his fellow Republicans for opposing Sandy economy aid, but he now says now is not the time for political retribution. Jackie, your thoughts on that?
I think he's completely right. I mean, as soon as I heard about the situation with Inhofe and Coburn, the 2 senators from Oklahoma,
sure,
my first reaction was, where's your compassion? Of course, I understand that the Republicans are saying now, no, we've got to offset the cost of this disaster aid. But I think immediately that should not be your reaction. Immediately you say, as a first responder, the people that we celebrate, how do we help?
And of course, we just heard there are estimates that this could be 1 to 2 and possibly even more money, but $2 billion is the price tag right now. Dee Dee, your thoughts?
Well, I think this is much ado about nothing, because I think the Democrats are trying to stir up some crisis not there, and I think it's in very poor taste, because there are people have died, there are people are suffering, they're homeless now, and right now there's $11.6 billion They're for federal aid for Oklahoma, and there is no Oklahoma relief bill. So I don't see what the problem is. And Coburn has said this is just a bogus complaint that the Democrats have put up. So the money's there for the relief. They will get it. And of course, New Jersey got it. So everyone's going to be taken care of.
Oh, what about that sequestration, which took place about 2 months ago, about how much aid FEMA is going to be giving? How do you think the sequestration is specifically going to affect this aid?
Okay, just to follow up on what Dee Dee said just a moment ago, it's really Coburn who introduced the politics into it. The Democrats haven't objected to giving funding to Oklahoma.
No, the point is this media trying to make it a big deal now when people have died in Oklahoma. Why, why even do this? It's ridiculous. So that's the point. It's the media making a big deal and trying to make him look like the bad guy.
How is the media trying to make him look like a bad guy?
Because he is not saying anything about, everybody's talking about, right now people have died in Oklahoma and everybody's trying to make Coburn the bad guy.
No.
No.
I don't, as a media analyst, I don't see how they're trying to make him the bad guy. He was the one that voted against disaster aid for Sandy.
But the point is, why bring it up now? It's in very poor taste. Why would you even bring it up? Why are they doing this?
Because everyone else wants to stay with the victims of Oklahoma.
They will be helped. There's $11.6 billion, and they're going to be able to get the
There
money.
is.
Well, there's $1 billion short this year because of all this, so they're going to be a little bit.
But in the kitty, because they voted for the money for Hurricane Sandy, there is now the 11.6 in waiting for them to use. It's there. The thing is that Coburn said we don't need that money. That we've already
We
raised.
don't need what money for Oklahoma?
For Oklahoma, he said, yeah. What he said is that we've already raised a quarter of the money from our
No,
own
he's saying the
self.
money's already there. And
The
it
money's
is.
there as his
well,
safety
actually,
mattress.
what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick. We're going to throw to a package right now. We're going to listen to Coburn exactly. So let's hear
Yes.
what he has to say.
Well, you understand, though, in a situation like this, we're looking at pictures right now of the tornado damage and the recovery effort.
It's all the political game,
Yeah,
Mika.
I know.
It's a political game. There's nothing. There's $11.6 billion sitting in a bank account waiting to help people in Oklahoma. This is all a game. And it's a crass political game because I was being asked these questions before we even pulled the dead people out of the rubble.
Well,
so it's just typical Washington BS.
This is Coburn walking back his earlier comments in which he said he didn't want money spent unless it was offset elsewhere. So money could go to Oklahoma, but somebody else had to
What's wrong
get
with
less.
saving money in places where there's waste? I mean, he didn't say one time that there wouldn't be money for the relief, but I mean, I think what he was saying is that we've got a lot of waste in Washington, which is true.
Jackie, as a media analyst,
Yeah.
those words, what did you think about those words? They're pretty harsh words there.
Pretty harsh words. Listen, there's always a media circus going on. Let's get left and right. Let's give it that. However, what's going on with Coburn is that he's trying to save face. He voted against Sandy, makes him look like the bad guy. Now, his community, his constituents, the people that will vote to keep him in office need that money. Yeah, it's sitting there waiting for them, but at first he said, we don't need your money, we don't need your help, we can take care of it ourselves. Well, it's there as a safety net. He can say whatever he wants to say to make himself look like the great guy, like the champion of the heartland who can take care of themselves. However, he's in a win-win because that money's there for him.
Dee Dee?
Yeah, I think he was right. There's some very poor taste to even be talking about that. Who cares? I mean, why are you pointing fingers? Whenever what we really should be talking about is, safe rooms in all schools now and taking care of the families and making sure that they get the FEMA aid that they need. So why point fingers at him at a time like that? Well, very poor taste.
Because he voted against
Why?
Sandy.
Then why bring it up? I mean, that's the whole point. I mean,
I just think this
is
is
ridiculous.
I think this is a non-issue. I really do.
Well, I do too. I agree with you. It is a non-issue. So why blame him? Why say, oh, he's a bad guy? Can you believe this? When we really should be talking about and praying and hoping good things for these people that are in desperate need.
I am completely with that. However, he was the one who voted against Sandy, and now his people need the money. So
and they should get it.
It's the situation.
Why make it about him? You should make it about the people. That's the whole point.
Let's do that.
I just want to go on record to say it. I never called him a bad head.
Never called him a what?
Bad head. It's not. But the Sandy relief was delayed for from when it happened late October until the middle of January because of the fight going on then over whether or not it would be offset from others. So people naturally wanted to ask about this.
Oh, so let's talk about the vendetta when people are dead in Oklahoma.
It's not a vendetta.
No. Now
Yeah,
you're making an issue.
No, the press brought it up.
Moving along rapidly, you did bring up the question of sequestration.
I do want to get to that point.
It does tie in another way. Now, in this particular case, the money that's available in FEMA has been cut down because of the sequestration. There's probably still enough. There's more than enough there to handle this. There are probably other catastrophes coming on. Another aspect where it ties in is that the we call it the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, which includes the Weather Service, now has to start furloughing people because of sequestration.
Which is not going to be good either. If you think about it, you still have tornado season that's going to be lasting, and hurricane season hasn't even started.
And also, as opposed to too much government waste being out there, they're already underfunded. In the case of Hurricane Sandy, for instance, European forecasters forecast where it was going well before ours did, because ours are using outdated equipment and things like that because of lack of funding in prior years.
Well, let's talk about, do you think that this is going to change the minds of Republicans who did not want federal aid for such disasters like Sandy? Do you think that we're going to see a mindset changing here? I'll start with you, Dee Dee.
I don't think it's because they didn't want federal aid. I think they were talking about the massive amounts, and there were other things attached to that bill too. Let's not forget that. There was a lot of pork attached just to get things through, and unfortunately, that's a dysfunction of Washington. So we've got problems.
That is a dysfunction of Washington.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, I would disagree with that too. Actually, there's a lot less that's been passed since they stopped putting pork in bills.
Look, and anytime you have something that everyone's going to vote for, which is aid for a disaster, they're going to come out of the closets, they're going to attach themselves to that bill with their own
attach goodies to it, and that was the problem. That's why it took a long time.
And put it through, and that's going to happen this time.
Let me ask you another question.
Also, I just want to say that some of the things that have been called aid in that bill were actually related to hurricane relief or to trying to prepare for the next hurricane rather than rebuilding the way it was before in a vulnerable way, to try to rebuild things in a more sustainable manner that could resist, a more resilient manner that could resist the next
I think everybody
disaster.
agreed on the mission. I think it was just the process that where it got messed up, because
that's Washington.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a problem, because when it's aid and when it's basic human needs, that's where the government really is needed and should have the funding.
Exactly. Let's talk about Sandy right now. Obviously, you have a lot of attention and funding going towards Oklahoma right now, but still a lot of work needs to be done. Some people have said that some politicians may have exploited Sandy. Your thoughts on that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think, I really think Governor Christie has been exceptional. I think the problem is that it's gone through a bottleneck in the bureaucracy. It's taking too long for people to get aid, because there's still, I think, folks even living in tents. That's nuts. I mean, that's been too long. So there should be a more efficient system to getting the people help that need it and need it now.
Jackie?
I completely agree, and it's what we were talking about before, is that people are going to attach their own needs and wants onto the bill, onto the disaster aid packages, and try to get what they want that way. If you want to call that taking advantage, then call it, but I also call it Washington.
Okay, and Scott, just your final thoughts on that.
Well, I'm going to agree with Dee Dee. I think
for once,
Christie,
first time for everything.
There you go. Christie has done all right on that. He had kind of a kerfuffle with the media in the past week about with
Snooki. That's what you're talking about.
Whether or not it was related to climate change. Someone asked him, the state has not been preparing for climate change, and then was not ready for this hurricane, and he turned it around to say, well, this hurricane wasn't caused by climate change, and so I'm not going to address that, which was an odd way to address the issue, but it's not a major, the state should be preparing for climate change, and would have been better prepared for the hurricane if it had been preparing for climate change.
One last question on this. Tom Coburn's response to the allegations, is he right or wrong?
What allegations?
Well, the statements that we just heard from him.
I think he's right. You know what I'm going to say. I think he's right.
I think he's playing right into the media circus, and he's one of the clowns.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it really rates being called an allegation. He's trying to make it an allegation and trying to to make himself look better, because he doesn't look good having voted against the last one and going to vote for this one for his state.
But that's not, he shouldn't be the topic. It should be the kids and the people who
Well,
died.
certainly I think everybody's hearts and thoughts are with the families of all the folks over in Oklahoma, and certainly hope for a very speedy recovery. We thank you for your thoughts. We're going to take a short break. Don't go away, everyone. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the U.S. economy. While some say the dollar is gaining strength, some are putting the brakes on that optimism.